Hey, Richard Nelson here with the Commonwealth Policy Center, and I'm in Frankfort in the Kentucky Capitol, and as you see, it's a gorgeous building full of history. We're going to do a year in review to talk about what's happened here in the legislature and in the Capitol regarding some of the high points and low points over the last year. We're going to have Governor Bevin join us in just a minute. Welcome to this year in review with the Commonwealth Policy Center. I'm here in Frankfort with Governor Bevin, and we're going to hear what has been going on here at the state capitol, some of the good news, some of the bad news, challenges, and the high points that have happened here in Frankfort as well. Governor Bevin, welcome to the program.
Great to be on with you.
Hey, we are recording this in the midst of a very challenging week and a half. Of course, last week there was a setback by the state Supreme Court. They struck down the pension reform bill that the legislature passed earlier in the year. You called a special session just a few days ago, yes, and asked the legislature to pass, according to what the Supreme Court ruled. They said it was a procedural issue, and you asked them to pass essentially the same bill that they did earlier.
It was actually a watered-down version of the same bill. We took out other things that were procedural and had been challenged and struck down earlier. We took out anything that could be legally contentious and asked them to pass a lesser version of what they had passed. Unfortunately, they didn't have it in them to do it.
Yeah, and I think the thinking was that this was the legislature that dealt with it earlier. The vote should have been there to essentially do what it had originally intended. Didn't happen. Do you see this as being more of a challenge with the new legislature coming in, 16 new legislators coming into Frankfort?
Yeah, it will be. I mean, there's going to be new Democrats and Republicans alike, and they're going to have to come up to speed on this issue. All these other folks that were asked to vote on it this week have been through this ringer for a year. I mean, all year long they've been talking about this. It is a big problem. I mean, the reason I came out and said both after the Supreme Court ruling and again after this latest failure on the part of the legislature is for the fact that I used the term sad is not accidental. It is a sad day for Kentucky because the problem still exists. We have a big pension crisis in Kentucky. It has to be fixed, and the only people who have the constitutional authority to do something are the legislature. The men and women who comprise the House and the Senate are the only people who are authorized to fix the problem. I can ask them to fix it, I can encourage them to fix it, but I can't make them do the job. It takes a combination of knowledge, courage, and leadership, and we came up short.
Some are suggesting that a new revenue stream needs to be created dedicated to the state pension system. Some are saying legalize recreational marijuana. Some are saying legalize casinos. Andy Beshear, Attorney General, sent a letter to the legislature encouraging them to legalize casino gambling. Is that the solution to the pension crisis in Kentucky?
It is not. I'm not sure why the Beshear family is so fascinated with legalizing casinos. I'm really not, but they have been. It was what his father ran on a couple of times and failed because the people of Kentucky don't want this. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that his argument is that will pay for the pension system. Let's think about that for a moment. It's been said that legalized casino gambling could produce as much as $200 million a year in revenue. Yeah. It's been said that legalizing marijuana could produce as much as $100 million in revenue. Let's just say you did the marijuana and you legalized it. If you put $100 million a year, dedicated 100%, if it did actually raise that much, first of all, which it may or may not, and if you dedicated 100% of it without any interruption by politicians in Frankfort, which is unlikely, but let's say you did, and you did that, everyone in Kentucky would have to smoke as much marijuana as they possibly could for 600 years.
Wow.
Just to fix the current unfunded liability of $60 billion. Now let's say you did legalize gambling and that was $200 million. They would have to gamble everybody as much as possible and dedicate 100% for 300 years. So let's say you did legalize gambling and marijuana together, and that generated $300 million a year. which is hypothetical, you put 100% in. You'd have to do that, smoke pot and gamble, for 200 years to fix the current problem. That assumes nobody retires in the next 200 years. It's ridiculous. It's not even a serious argument. It's not, and they know it's not.
Now, as you've mentioned before, that there are structural deficiencies in the state pension system. That's what the bill tried to do, is to shore it up, to make it a sustainable system long-term. In the last 3 years, since you've become governor, you have doubled the amount requested in the Kentucky teachers' retirement system. Went from 45% to about 93%. Over $3 billion has been put into the state retirement system, which is a significant difference from what the previous administration did. You're trying to shore up the system, trying to make it sustainable, trying for this really to make sure the state keeps its promise, and yet you're receiving a lot of criticism from certain people, not from everybody, certain people. How do you communicate to those teachers and state workers that don't believe you have the best interest in mind? I'm not sure how to phrase that, but
here's the way to think about it. I understand what you're asking, and I think it's important to understand for every loud and noisy and confused and angry and scared person, and there are some of all the above, some who are all those things, some who are one or more of those things, there are tens of people who understand what's at stake and appreciate that we're trying to save the system. If that were not the case, you would have seen the vaunted blue wave come to Kentucky. We just came through an election cycle. And all the people who stormed the gates and said they were going to remember in November, they did in fact remember. But for everyone who remembered and wants to go back to the way things used to be, where pensions were underfunded and we didn't talk about it and we just pretended it was good and we lied to people, for everybody who wants to go back to that, there were clearly more people who remember that and want to go in a different direction. That's why twice as many people who voted for no change got thrown out in this most recent election as people who voted to fix the system. The people of Kentucky get it. Teachers get it. Other public employees get it. The taxpayers get it. The people in the banks and the businesses that are funding this and are affected by credit ratings, they get this. People understand that the system has to be fixed. It will take courage. It will take knowledge. It will take leadership. It has to come from the legislature. That's the only authorized body that can make these changes. If it were up to me, I would make the changes. If it was up to the courts, they presumably would make the changes. The only people who have the authority per the Kentucky Constitution is the legislature.
You had implemented record funding for K through 12 public schools, record funding there, which again is an indication of your commitment to public schools. You are concerned about students who are not achieving and attaining the level of education that they should once they graduate. We have failing schools. Many schools are doing well, but we have some failing schools that have trapped students, particularly in the west end of Louisville. So you're in favor of charter schools legislation, which did pass, but you're receiving pushback on that. How would you respond to those who would say that charter schools aren't the way to go, or critics of that?
I would say this: I'm for education. If somebody is in a public school, if they're in a private school, if they're in a public charter school, if they are homeschooled, as long as they are being educated and they are being prepared for life in the 21st century, I am for all of the above. Why would somebody who says they want children to be educated be opposed to a different way for one child to be educated than another? Why do we assume that there's only one method, especially when the only one method some people seem to love has been coming up short relative to what our expectations are? So I'm not denigrating any one area. I'm saying all the above. And in some of our urban communities especially, where we have had failing schools for years and years, why would we not give those students and their parents a choice for something that gives them a shot at the American dream, something that gives them a chance for the quality education that every one of us wants for our own children?
Okay. So you're truly for school choice. One of the highlights or high points in Kentucky education is that we are in the upper 10% in the country when it comes to high school graduation. At the same time, about a third of those high school graduates are not ready for college or for a career, which I saw a clip from a conference you held of higher education leaders, and you were talking about different ways to fix this. Because on one hand, yes, we want students to graduate. On the other hand, they need to be prepared for the workforce or for college. What are your proposals to help them to transition and to be prepared for work or for college?
If the point of graduation is just to prove that you were there, we haven't really helped anybody. If a diploma simply is a participation certificate, then that's really not of any help to people. You should come out with skills that allow you to go on to post-secondary training, technical schools, certifications, college, or to the workforce. And if we're not preparing you for that, it doesn't matter whether you've graduated or not. So what's being done to change that? The Board of Education in the state is looking at the standards. They're looking at things like civics classes and financial literacy classes and having expectations that people can read at grade level at 3rd grade and 8th grade, and that I had pushback from the KEA in the state over the Board of Education in Kentucky said that to graduate from high school, you should be able to at least read at a 10th grade level. And the KEA said that's too much to ask and pushed back. But to what end? Yes, it might make it easier to pass them on through if they don't have to read. So now what they've done is they've agreed that, okay, well, as long as they were proficient in either math or English in the 8th grade, then, and they're still around in the 12th grade, then that's good enough. Why are we settling? Why do we expect less of children in Kentucky than people do of children in other states? We should expect as much or more. Our children aren't less capable than other children. I want us to have a high standard and to provide every avenue possible. That's why we're putting record amounts of funding into public education. But I also want to make it available for kids to get educated any other way as well.
At that same conference I referenced, it was mentioned that there are about 100,000 skilled jobs in Kentucky that are available. They're looking for workers to fill those roles, but they can't find them. This is related to the education issue.
Of course.
Transitioning them from high school into the workforce. When it comes to the economy in Kentucky, we have seen economic development, significant
Tremendous.
economic growth in the past 3 years since you've been governor. The statistics say this: there have been just under 48,000 new jobs created in Kentucky, $17.3 billion in new investment in Kentucky, and then 991 new and expanded facilities here in the Commonwealth. Just under $80 billion in exports as well. Are you pleased with those results?
Love it. But I want to see those numbers continue to increase. We're actually about to make another announcement today for a small rural community that I recently visited that's about to have another 134 jobs coming to that community, in a community that has seen a real downturn over the last decade. So it's exciting to me. Jobs, the economy, opportunity, the chance for people to have their children and grandchildren live in, work in, and grow up here in Kentucky. This is what my role is as governor, is to try to create a sound economy. You mentioned those areas where we have 100,000 jobs. We've started something called work-ready scholarships. Yeah. Where we're actually now saying that the state of Kentucky will pay last dollar. So apply for whatever financial aid you're eligible for, and then the state will pay every last dollar between that amount and the cost if you're willing to pursue a degree, and there's 60 different ones in the fields of IT, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, construction trades, logistics. If you pursue a degree in their 60 different fields, we will pay for you to get 2 years worth of degrees and or certifications, because we know there are jobs waiting and people who are working, that are engaged, that are paying taxes. This is what will make Kentucky bright.
Yeah, you're also doing the Work Ready Skills Initiative, or is that what, and then the Work
Yes.
Ready, the scholarship, are those
Yeah,
connected?
the Skills Initiative is where we said there's $100 million that we will allow to be competed for. The local high school, the local post-secondary school, college, technical school, etc., and the local business community have to get together. High school, college, and business get together in your community and say, what does your community need? What skills and training do you need? And what is each of you willing to contribute to get people ready for the 21st century in your community? Then compete. They did. We had $540 million worth of applications. We awarded the $100 million. But it was matched by another $150 million from the local community. So in the last 2 years, we've put $250 million into local training programs that were driven by the demand of the local community. And that will make a transformative impact. So I'm excited. A lot of good things are happening economically.
So you're trying to help people to be prepared, especially in this case, young people, to be prepared for the work world. And this, I want to pivot to another issue.
It's for life in general. Because if you're not working in the 21st century, you're not going to have a very good life. It's going to be a hard life.
Yeah. And so that worldview, what you're saying, is different from others who would maybe have empathy, or they see people as downtrodden, and they're in that position, whatever it is. Yeah. And they see this as hard-hearted. They see it as, so the Medicaid reform, the waiver from the federal government. You instituted this a couple of years ago, saying that if you're able-bodied between 18 and 60, if you're not a primary caregiver, if you're healthy, if you're able to work, then you should work if you're receiving that benefit. And people will paint you as somebody as being hard-hearted and cold-hearted, but you see this from a little different angle.
Very much. I am such a person. I'm one of these people that was in this place. I grew up well below the poverty level. My family never had any health care coverage. I never had access to it. I was an active duty Army officer in my 20s before I ever had health coverage. So I don't look at people like this with sympathy. I look at them with empathy. I've been there. I know that world. And I know the best opportunity out of poverty is opportunity in a job, in an expectation, and the opportunity to pursue with dignity what it is to do for yourself. So to me, it's the right thing to do. The important thing to understand too, Richard, is this. All of those who think we need to provide programs for people have to remember that somebody pays for those programs. And the people who pay are the people with jobs. If we have more people in the programs than we have people in jobs, it won't work, because you actually have to pay for it.
If you do the math, you'll find out that there's only so many dollars to go around to support these programs. As it is, I think the number's around 800,000 Kentuckians that are on the Medicaid rolls. Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Oh my goodness, it's about 1.3 million.
Okay, so it's grown.
It's a third of people in Kentucky.
So this is a major government program, and again, it was meant to be a safety net for those who are not working and could not provide health coverage on their own. The federal government stepped in to provide, and you're saying, hey, if you're able to work, if you're able to go to school, then you should do that.
It's not just working. Understand, we said that if you're an able-bodied working-age person with no dependents, no disabilities, you're capable of working, you can either work 20 hours a week, volunteer 20 hours a week, be in school 20 hours a week, be in training 20 hours a week, or take care of someone for 20 hours a week. You can do one or all of those things in every community. People who say that, we can't do that in our community. Really? You can't take care of someone, you can't volunteer, you can't be in training, you can't be in school, you can't be working? I don't believe it. 4 hours a day, 5 days a week in exchange for something for free that other people don't have themselves but are providing to you? Yeah. I think it's offensive to hardworking people who pay taxes to take their money and give it to somebody who's not willing to do the same thing but could and just choose not to.
So from what I'm hearing, first of all, that's not a moral thing for people to expect that, but there's a dignity element involved. Sure. Where if somebody has skin in the game, if they're working or going to school, then they have ownership in that. And that's part of your health initiative, where you're trying to incentivize people taking ownership in their own health decisions, their own life decisions. And that's a novel idea in government. The government that acknowledges dignity, but incentivizing a program. And I don't know if, this has not been done in other states, to my knowledge.
We were the first state given permission to do this, and of course we got sued because it's what liberals do. People who want to spend your money, when they don't get to spend your money the way they want, they run to their friends in the courts. It's what they always do. So this has worked its way out. It's going to come back. But here's the thing. I would say to you, and I would say to everybody that's out there watching this, if you bought your own bicycle, did you ever buy your own bicycle when you were a kid? Did you leave that bicycle out in the rain?
Nope.
Of course not. Why? Because you bought it yourself. The kids who left their bicycles out in the rain were usually the kids who had that bicycle given to them, or who were using their brother or sister's bicycle, perhaps. But my point being is, if you have a vested interest in something, you care about it, you value it, you use it and take care of it in all the right ways. Our bodies and our health is no different. I want people to be engaged, because engaged people who are respected treat themselves with respect. They don't take their wrong decisions as it relates to drugs and other things, because there's dignity and pride. The way we were wired and created, people can believe or not believe that we were created a certain way. But I truly believe we were, and I believe we are wired to innately know when we are doing things with respect and pride and dignity, and there's a certain sense of satisfaction that comes from doing things the right way and not riding other people's coattails.
Yeah. Going on to another issue, major bill passed earlier this legislative session was adoption reform. It made it easier for parents to adopt children. So it covered other areas as well, but this is an issue that's near and dear to your heart. Tell us about your efforts to make it easier for parents to adopt children.
Sure, we could have a long conversation. I'll make it very short. My wife and I have 9 children. 4 of them are adopted. We've had experience both in Kentucky and outside of Kentucky with the adoption process and the foster care system. And I will simply say that both in Kentucky and everywhere, it is broken relative to what it needs to be. House Bill 1, which was passed this year, will start to transform that. It's still broken in Kentucky. We have 10,000 children. And I would say to all of your viewers, if you can be part of this solution, if you have the ability in any way, shape, or form to come alongside a family that's adopting or fostering, or to be such a family yourself, even if it's just to provide respite care or a night out or some babysitting or a meal or just some financial support or just an encouraging word. 10,000 children who need good foster homes. We have 6,000 some odd different houses of worship. What is it to be the hands and feet of Christ if not to reach out to the least of these, to the widows and orphans who are the ones we're talking about here? And we have the ability in this state. 2,500 of these children are fully eligible to be adopted. They just want a forever family. We can be the solution. The people of Kentucky, your viewers alone could fix this problem. And we just need to step up. So I believe it's our responsibility. House Bill 1 will help to make this easier, but it's just the first inning. We have a long way to go, and we're going to start to see change coming, but it's not coming fast enough, unfortunately.
That's good. Pivoting to another life issue, you identify as a pro-life governor, and a number of significant pro-life laws have been enacted in the last 3 years. Informed consent, the ultrasound bill, which your attorneys are defending in court, 2 different types of abortion bans, a 20-week abortion ban, the fetal pain bill that passed last year, and then the 11-week abortion ban, and then it also specifically bans dismemberment abortions, a gruesome type of abortion procedure. Your attorneys are defending that in court as well. You've banned the funding to Planned Parenthood, or actually put them to the very bottom of the list. So you are a pro-life governor. Your attorneys are defending these laws that are being challenged in court. What are the prospects of let's go to the 11-week abortion ban that has been argued by your attorneys in court? Do you think that that's going to be upheld?
I do. I think ultimately this will end up in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. And I think it will. There's a certain sovereignty and autonomy that states have and rights that they have, even under the Constitution of the United States. There are things that are the responsibility of the federal government and things that are the responsibility of the states and of the people, per the 10th Amendment. But it's frankly, I can't justify anybody who would say dismembering a living human being as the way to kill it is anything other than barbaric. And the fact, it's important, you made mention of something that's important for your viewers to understand. These are laws that were passed by the legislature with the full authority to do so. The responsibility of defending those laws falls on the state's attorney general. That is the only responsibility. It is the sole responsibility of the state's attorney general, but he refuses to defend these laws. He's a pro-abortion individual himself, and so he won't even, it doesn't matter what his personal belief is. He shouldn't allow it to overturn his responsibility to do his job or to overrule. But he does. His job is to defend what our laws are. He won't do it. So my office and my legal staff has to defend the legislature and defend the laws of the state and defend the will of Kentuckians who are largely supportive of life.
Another law that you're upholding is a law that was passed in 1998 that requires any surgical center to have a transfer agreement with a local hospital. This is for the safety of the patients there. The last remaining abortion clinic in Kentucky is EMW in Louisville. They have been operating in violation of that law, and your legal team has sued them. That is in court as well. What are the prospects of that being upheld?
Well, here's what's crazy, is that I just had a federal judge recently disregard the law and say, you know, it shouldn't be the law. It doesn't matter whether he thinks it should be the law. It is the law. As a judge, it's outrageous that he thinks he can disregard it. For 20 plus years, it's been the law here in Kentucky. The same law exists in most other states as well. And while it's not convenient for him, because if he were to say they must follow the law, they would be forced to shut down. He doesn't want to be the judge who shuts them down, even though they're violating the law. So he just pretended the law doesn't apply. But it does apply.
And this has been appealed to the U.S. Sixth Circuit Court,
Yes.
which, by the way, upheld an Ohio law, very similar Ohio law earlier this year. So it looks like the prospects are good of this being upheld. And if it's upheld, it looks like EMW will have to make a choice. Do they abide by the law or do they close their doors?
Right. They have the ability to apply the law and abide by it. But if they choose to skirt the law and think they can get away with it, they're not going to. In Kentucky, people are expected to follow the law. And if the law is wrong, let's change the laws. And that could apply to any number of things. But the laws are the laws, and they should be applied. And they should also be applied by the judges who are responsible for ruling on them. It's not about opinions, it's about laws.
Governor, we are running out of time. We've got just about 3 minutes. I want to talk about next year, what you plan to do and what you'd like to achieve. You say the difference between a dreamer and a visionary is action, and we've just seen from a number of different things that you've done and accomplished over the last 3 years. What would you like to accomplish in your last year before the election?
There are many things I'd like to see done. I want to see a continuation on these fronts we talked about. We have to fix the pension crisis. The pension system is failing. It's largely already failed, and we need to find a way to save it. We need to save the pension system. We need a modernized, comprehensive tax policy for our state that's competitive to other states. We need to fully implement House Bill 1 and the changes and things we're doing to adoption and foster care. We need to address more criminal justice reform and what we can do a better job of to assimilate people back into society when they come out of the prison system. We need to do a better job of getting our hands on this opioid crisis. We're applying record amounts of dollars from the state and federal government to this issue. But we also need to invigorate the people who are out in the communities, faith-based people and otherwise, to step up and take ownership, to be their brother's keeper, to be part of the solution, not to always turn to government, not to always assume that a government program or someone else's money is going to fix it, but rather, what can I do? What can my community do? What can my church do? What can my family do? What can we do to be part of the solution? All of these are the things that I'll be talking about in 2019 and beyond.
Sounds like an ambitious agenda, but as we've heard you say before, you want Kentucky to be the best version of itself. And what I'm hearing is that it's not government that's going to solve all the problems. It's not for people to look to government. I'm kind of thinking of what JFK said. It's not what your country can do for you, but it's what you can do for your country. And maybe I'm hearing a ring of that in what you're saying.
Exactly. It's exactly what I'm saying, is that we are a government of and by and for the people means exactly that. It's of the people, it's by the people, and it is for the people. It's not just for the people. It's of and by them. We have a responsibility. Of and by and for the people only works, though, if the people take that seriously. If the people step up and stay engaged. It's our responsibility.
All right. Governor Bevin, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.